All right, everybody. So I see that people are still entering into the room, which is fantastic. It seems like we're going to have a full house here today. So you know what? We're not going to waste any time. We're just going to jump right into it. Welcome everybody to today's Fireside Chat hosted by Palette Skills and proudly sponsored by our partners at TD Bank. For those of you who don't know, Palette Skills is a leader in developing employer-led upskilling programs that result in high-demand jobs in growing industries. So our vision is inclusive economy where people and companies achieve their full potential. My name is Whitley, and it's a pleasure to be hosting today's Fireside Chat. We are going to be diving into the topic of the power of growth marketing, which we have a phenomenal guest here today to lead this conversation. And I'm just super, super excited. So for those of you who are looking to really, kickstart your growth in marketing and to fuel your business or your career, you are in the right place. We have a fantastic hour planned out here with our guest, Sarah Stockdale. And so basically, just to kind of give you guys a quick overview of how today's chat is going to go, I'm going to be moderating the conversation today, but at any time, of course, we want you to ask your questions and get the most out of today's conversation. And so at any point in time, we do have our Zoom chat box. And so anytime that you have any questions throughout the conversation today, please drop them in the chat. Do not be shy. Drop your questions in the chat, and we will reserve some time toward the end to actually review your questions and hopefully answer those questions as well. So grab your favorite beverage, get comfy, get cozy, and I'm going to introduce our today's guest. So today we've got Sarah Stockdale, who is the CEO of Growclass, which is a growth marketing training company. And so Sarah has this incredible journey. It's really hard to kind of just like sum it all up in one bio, but she is also the host of the podcast, The Growth Effect, which is in partnership of the Globe and Mail as well as HSBC. She has been a guest expert on with CTV and CBC, as well as a TEDx speaker. She is a copywriting expert as well. Sarah is just coming with a wealth of knowledge and expertise in the area of marketing in the tech sector. So as we dive into the conversation, you're going to learn more about Sarah and her journey, and also, leave you feeling inspired, as well as even maybe a little more equipped when it comes to growth marketing. So without further ado, welcome, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna dive right into it. So first and foremost, I'm really curious to know, we've got all these terms when it comes around marketing. And so I'm really curious to know, what is your definition of growth marketing and how can it really help our audience today?
Yeah, it's a great question because there's so many different ways people talk about marketing, right? So we've got digital marketing, growth marketing, acquisition, advertising. There's a whole bunch of different ways that people position this. So when we're talking about traditional marketing, often we are just talking about getting sales in the door. So everything that we need to do to acquire a customer. What growth marketing changes that to is growth marketers are responsible for the entire customer journey. Not only are we responsible for bringing those leads in and getting those sales, we're also responsible for making sure that person gets to activation, making sure that person starts using the app or the software, or that they make a second purchase if they're an e-commerce customer. We're really interested in lifetime value of a customer. How much does someone spend with us over the entire course of their lifetime as a customer? And we're really interested in resurrection and retention. How do we keep customers? How do we keep them engaged? How do we notice potential red flags and identify reasons why people might be falling off and kind of close those loops? Where traditional marketing kind of pours people into the bucket, growth marketers make sure that the bucket's not leaking. We're making sure that this is a experience and a product that is end to end helping folks. And then if they do churn, if they do leave, we're also responsible for bringing them back, for resurrecting them.
Okay, that's fantastic. And I can see how that can be so powerful and valuable to folks in every industry, right? But I'm also very curious to know, I know that you were a foundational team member in the startup company Wave, which is now a Canadian financial tech giant. I'm really curious to know, what did your journey look like from there to becoming a CEO of Growclass?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started at Wave, I don't even remember the year, more than a decade ago, when it was an 18-person company with just engineers. They hadn't raised much money other than an angel round. And I joined as one of the very first marketers on the team. So I was looking at a potential career in PR and said no to a pretty lucrative full-time opportunity at a big PR firm on Bay Street to take a 3-month contract with this tiny little tech startup. Back in the day when like no one was talking about tech startups, when I told my friends I was working on accounting software, everyone was like, ew, that sounds awful. Why would you do that with your life? But after that 3-month contract, the company raised a huge Series A round, and the rest is kind of history. It was a long journey there. So I helped build out the payroll team, which was a product that we acquired and built out. And help build up the growth infrastructure there. And then I was actually, I was poached by a financial technology startup in San Francisco called Tilt that had just raised their first big round of funding. And that was a peer-to-peer payments sharing platform. It was growing really well in the States. We launched it in Canada and then launched it in 6 additional international markets. And that was a lot of fun. It was a very high growth rocket ship startup. Long hours, hard work, lots of travel, but some of the smartest people I've ever worked with in my career. Such an incredible experience. And that company was acquired by Airbnb in 2017. So I kind of had the do I move to San Francisco and work at a big tech company, or do I stay in Toronto where my home is, where my friends and family are, where I want to build my life and do my own thing? So I started a consulting company called Valkyrie, instead of, taking the big tech job, and worked with a bunch of Series A startups on their growth and just saw a huge hole. So in a couple of ways, right? These companies that I was working with were really struggling to hire great talent. There were these roles that they needed technical marketers for, with these hard skills and specific experience, and not a lot of people in Canada. So they were going and hiring US talent. And I was like, man, we have the capabilities here. Like, we can train the people here. And then I was also seeing women and marginalized folks at these companies staying in support roles, staying in lower level marketing roles, and knowing that with just like some tweaks to the way they position their experience and the way they talk about their capabilities and a few additional hard skills, and they're unlocking 6-figure jobs at these tech companies. So we started Growclass with the specific mandate to build this growth talent in Canada for tech companies, and at the same time focus the way in which we who we want to help on the people that we want to see, getting those 6-figure roles and that we think deserve that salary bump. So that's what we focus on. And that's kind of, that's where it came from. And we've been doing that for the past 3 years. We started in May of 2020, which is a crazy time to start a business.
That's incredible, Sarah. I think that's fantastic. And it's so important that we have these sort of leaders in the community, in the industries, who are creating these spaces of opportunity to really lifting each other up and helping each other really step into these additional opportunities and advanced career growth. So thank you for sharing that. Going back to your time again at Wave, and you sort of said it was a roller coaster of a ride going through that era, but what would have been some of those lessons and opportunities that you learned from during that time that would be applicable to somebody who may be in a startup company or sort of just starting off in navigating their career?
Yeah, I would say it's especially at startups, because everyone has so much energy and there's so many opportunities and there's not a lot of baseline metrics in terms of what's worked before. Folks can get shiny object syndrome really quickly, right? You like read a blog post and you read about a strategy and you really want to implement it. You want to try things. And where I've seen and what Wave did really well, and what I've seen these early stage companies do really well, is get really close to the customer, figure out what their pain is, how to communicate with them, where they look for your product online, and build things that have compounding growth effects over time. So what Wave did really well was SEO. They built ton of landing pages, a lot of content that was very specifically focused on the people they were trying to help. And instead of just kind of chasing around these shiny objects, which we definitely did too, but like in addition, we also kind of had this like engine that we were starting to build that we could see, you know, if we do all of this work now, in 2, 3, or 5 years, that's going to start really paying off for the business. So not only kind of thinking in the short term, which is really easy, especially at venture funded startups, but if you can take a bit more of a long view and build that engine, you're going to be you're going to make your life easier in the long run, and B, you're going to become indispensable to that company because you're actually building systems.
Yeah. I really love that, Sarah. And I think that just we've got a mixture of an audience here today. And so kind of elaborating on that, because of course you've had to learn as you've gone through the journey, right? And so when we talk about getting really focused and not getting distracted by the shiny objects, which is so easy to do, whether you're in a career pathway or if you're an entrepreneur or business owner, right? Or a leader in running it and managing a team, it's very easy to get sidetracked by those shiny objects. So what kind of advice could you give to somebody on how they can get really clear and focused on that one thing and to really get good at that before they progress on to the next thing, kind of building on that growth to help them within the growth marketing?
No, absolutely. I would say a couple of things. One, training programs like Palette and Growclass exist to make you better faster. So when I was coming up at Wave, I was learning at events and on blog posts. Like I was learning by like doing things and failing a lot, because there weren't these resources for me to really hone my skill set and focus. And so I had to learn the hard way a lot. So if you can find people who have learned the hard way, who are good educators that can show you where those pitfalls are, because sometimes it's hard to know what is a shiny object and what it might be a good strategy. I would lean on mentors in your company, but especially at early stage startups, there's usually not that many people and they're very strapped for time. So seek out communities of people who have done this before, who can mentor you, who you can learn from, and who you can go to consistently and say like, hey, I'm thinking about this. Like, what are people seeing? What are people thinking about? What have people tried? Because you don't want to have to try all of those things and fail yourself. You want to be able to learn from other people's experiences so that you can really figure out where you want to focus your time. And then like in the job, signal is so key, and just not, I think the biggest thing, especially in marketing, but in sales and any role, is remembering how much you don't know and how to just stay curious, stay incredibly curious about your product, about the goals of your founders, about your customers, about other things that might be working that you haven't thought of. We tend to get worse at our jobs if we stop being consistent learners. Like the people I love working with and the people who do the best work are really great at what they do, but they're constantly seeking, like they're constantly looking to learn something new, and then try it and see if it works.
Yeah, that's so good, Sarah. I think that having mentors and being surrounded by those like-minded individuals that you can learn from, that you can up-level from, is so powerful too, with your own personal growth and your own development. And so when it comes to that, what are some, I guess, what are some tips or strategies that you could share with folks who are just maybe in the beginning stages of expanding their network and getting out and just networking and building that support circle, whether that's outside of their teams, outside of their organization, wherever. I know that you're really, really great at it. So what are some tips and strategies you could share with folks?
Yeah, I think networking gets a bad rap, right? Like, especially when folks are coming out of university, you think you have to cold message people on LinkedIn and pass out business cards. The way that I like to think about networking is just like building a big friendship community that happens to align with what you're working on professionally. And the way to do that in the early stages of your career, I would say two things. One, look for people that you already admire and ask them who they admire and ask for introductions. Warm introductions are the best possible way to get a yes to a short phone call. The second is get really clear on what you're looking for in terms of these relationships. When people cold DM me on LinkedIn and they say, hey, I'd love to pick your brain over coffee. To me, I don't like, you're not telling me why specifically you want to pick my brain. What questions do you have? How can I be specifically helpful to your career path? What value can you add back to the people that you're asking from? Because remember, like these, if you think about it as relationships and friendships, those aren't transactional relationships. You're giving both ways. So always be thinking about, the person that I want to have coffee with, why, how can I, and, people want to know, like, what is special about me that you've sought me out? So tell them, and don't be afraid to compliment their career journey and what you're excited that they've done and the things that you have questions about. And then always the question is like, how can I be helpful to you? Like, what is top of mind for you right now? Do you want to bounce something off of me as a customer of your product? Is there someone I can introduce you to? Do you just want to keep me in the back of your mind if you need a specific thing? Like, always figure out how you can be valuable and adding love back into your network. And if you're just graduating, like, you can cold email, you can cold LinkedIn message people. But just remember that friendship element, right? Like a cold message shouldn't feel cold. You should warm it up really fast with those details and the reason why you're reaching out and a very specific ask. And I always tell people, like, ask for a 15-minute call and ask them to send you their calendar link. Like, be like, I want to book it around your schedule. I only need 15 minutes. I have 3 questions. This is what I specifically want to talk about. It's so easy to say yes to that because you know exactly what's going to happen.
Oh, yeah, I love that. And also for those of you who are watching and that resonated with, I know just back a couple weeks ago, we did a workshop with Sarah and she did a phenomenal workshop on how to write cold emails, like really powerful cold emails. I sat in on that. I learned a bunch and part of my job is doing that cold outreach. And I learned a ton from that. So you can actually find that on the Palette Skills website if that's something that you're interested in getting better at. So I want to dive into a little more of the tips and insights that you can share around growth marketing for our viewers today. But before we dive into that, something that was coming up when you were talking about doing that cold outreach and, trying to expand your network. One thing I find that comes up a lot that I hear often is that imposter syndrome, that fear of like putting yourself out there, that fear of, what is this other person thinking? Who am I to message this person and try and invite them to a coffee date? So I know for you, you're a CEO. It has taken a lot of probably overcoming some self-doubt, those moments of
oh yes,
right? So what is a piece of advice you can share with somebody who may, experience that imposter syndrome from time to time?
Yeah, the best thing I was ever told, and this is the thing that helped me get out of my own way, I think a lot. It was from a coach, and she said, I want you to think of rejection is not real. Rejection isn't real. Like, just put that in your mind. Because right now you don't have the thing you're asking for. You don't have it. You're not losing anything by asking. The only thing you have after asking is more information. And especially if you are interested in growth marketing and you want to be experimental in the way that you live your life, More information is always better. Like no is more information. No is a good feedback. It directs you in a different direction that you're probably going to get to what you're seeking faster than staying frozen. So my friend Josh Dominguez, who's the CEO of a company called Flash Food, which is an incredible company with a huge impact. Anytime I get in my way with like sales or something like that, he's like, get to know faster. Your goal is to get a no. Like if you can make that your goal, then it takes away the fear of it because you're focused on getting that information. You're in the same, you end up in the same place as you are right now. You don't lose anything if you get a no. But if you put yourself out there, you might get a yes. So you might progress your path forward. And that's what we're all trying to do. So the only like just be gracious and kind, and remember that the world is a small town, and treat people the way that you would want to be treated. But get to know, like, don't worry about that rejection, because you're in the exact same spot you were before. If that person says no to a coffee, you didn't have the coffee date now. It's fine.
Yeah. I love that flip in perspective, right? I think honestly, sometimes when we come up against ourselves, right, we become those blockages. It really is powerful when we can just do a flip in perspective that can just kind of get the ball moving and moving forward. So going back to your company, Sarah, you have a Growclass, which is an online growth marketing training company. And so I know that you work with a lot of individuals, you work with a lot of businesses. And what are the biggest things that people come to you for? What are the biggest things that people want to know that you're helping them with?
Yeah, I would say like me personally. So we have instructors that teach, like our Tiffany De Silva teaches SEO, and she's incredible at it. Like if you are intimidated by search engine optimization, she's your go-to. People come to Growclass when they want to build growth strategies, and what they have found elsewhere is full of acronyms. It's gatekeeping information. It's making it seem harder than it actually is. So the thing that we are great at is taking hard skills, teaching them in a soft way, teaching them in a way that is accessible, that is friendly, that feels inclusive and community focused. People come to me specifically when they are trying to, usually early stage companies, when they're trying to figure out how to build a growth strategy, usually in their first 90 days, like their 30, 60, 90-day growth strategy, and how to build their team. Things that I absolutely love helping folks with, conversion copywriting and email marketing, or I just love writing. I love marketing writing. And those are the things that I nerd out on constantly with clients and with students. I just came from a tear up session where we were giving people feedback on their landing pages. So a lot of it is the high level strategy. And then my weeds are the writing weeds. Those are the things that I love.
Gotcha. That's so awesome. I think also you hit the nail on the head when you talked about, growth strategies. And so in my mind, because I have a background in marketing. And so in my mind, I'm thinking there's the growth strategy individually, there's growth strategies within businesses as well. And they're going to look a little bit different, but just for the sake of our viewers, our audience who's watching and tuning in today, what are some key takeaways that you could leave the audience with that they could start to implement today to help them with their growth strategy? Maybe that's even with their personal branding for their career, whether that's working within teams to generating revenue, or it's working within marketing teams. What are 3 powerful strategies or tips that you could leave them with?
Yeah, I would say the first one, start thinking of things as experiments. Start thinking of the way that you do your work, whether that's on your own career or, in a company, as experimentation. We use a model in Growclass called learn, validate, share. Collect a whole bunch of information. That's your learn phase, whether that's research on your industry, if you're looking to make a career change, like really getting in the weeds and having conversations with people, taking people for coffee, asking a lot of questions, getting really curious. From a company standpoint, that's customer interviews and a whole lot of customer analytics and data, and really understanding who your customer is and what you're solving for them. And then From there, you're going to build your hypotheses. What do you think is going to work based on this information that you've collected? And then you come up with your lean experiment. A really great example of this in practice, because sometimes when I talk about experimentation, people are like, I don't really know what would I do? A friend of mine, Alyssa Atkins, who has a company called Lilia, she built her company, or had the idea for the company, when she was running growth at a company called Care Guide. And she was specifically just looking for information on her own fertility options. Like, this is a thing when you're in your 30s as a woman, you're like, what happens now? Like, I don't know what the timelines are. I don't know how these things work. And she couldn't find a lot of good information. She was like really struggling with finding where she could go and get testing, how she could figure out what her options were. There was not really much that she could find. That was her research phase. Her hypothesis from that is probably other women like me in their 30s who are seeking out this information and who need something to help them. And so her hypothesis became, what if I started a company that focused on women and fertility in this part of their life, and potentially, getting blood tests to them to help them figure out where they're at and just what their options are. And so normally when someone has an entrepreneurial idea like that, right, they either shelve it, kind of think about it in the back of their head for a long time, or they're like, okay, I'm going to build a prototype. I'm going to build a brand. I'm going to figure out like our copy and our social handles, and I'm going to try to get investment, and they go full hog. So what I want you to do is pull back from that and run an experiment. And that's what Alyssa did. So what she did was, I'm just going to put up a landing page for the product I think should exist in the world, the thing that I want to build. It doesn't exist yet, but what I'm going to do is put it out there, pretend it does exist. I'm going to run Facebook ads to it. I'm going to spend $200 of my own money and run some Facebook ads to it and just see, does anyone else want this? And is anyone else willing to pay for it? Because you can ask your friends, would you buy this? It's a terrible customer interview question. Everyone will just say yes to make you feel better. And then you go and build the wrong thing. So she put up a payment page and ran ads to this landing page and tried to collect payments. Of course, there wasn't a product, so she broke the payment page. And it was like, it's not available in your country yet. Put in your email address and let us know. But she ran this experiment before she did any other work. And I think she woke up with like 68 failed checkouts. So like people had actually tried to buy it. So now she understood, not only did she do her research, she did the learn phase, she validated it with a hypothesis and a lean experiment. And then she could share those learnings and then start building something from a foundation of understanding that like, this is a problem that actually does need to be solved in the world. So that's the mindset I want you to take to everything that you're working on. How am I collecting information? What are my hypotheses? How am I running lean experiments to kind of get a sense of whether or not I'm on the right track? And then for sure, once you get that validation, go for it. Put more time and energy and resources into it. But that's how I think about my own personal growth. That's how I think about my business's growth. That's how I train people to grow their businesses, from an experimental framework. So that's a very long tip. I'm sorry.
No, I think that's really interesting. And I think it's really powerful, especially for those out there who are entrepreneurs or, looking to start a business. And I think that's very, very useful in terms of like that experimental phase. How could folks who may be more so in the career phase of their life, just thinking there could be lots of areas, but let's say for the tech industry, I know you've become quite the expert in the tech industry, Sarah. And so could we use the example of the tech industry and someone who might be in their career path?
Yeah, absolutely. So would this be a person who wants to apply and join a tech company in a specific kind of role, or they're trying to make a career shift?
Yeah, a career shift into the tech industry.
Okay, cool. So when you're thinking about making a career change, I would say you need to get your story like ready. So if I'm interviewing for roles, I'm really curious about what experience aligns with what I'm looking for. And so sometimes your experience doesn't match the job description of what someone's asking for because you're trying to make a career shift. Apply anyway first, like don't wait until you can fill out that whole job description because you are going to be bored in that job if you can check all of those boxes. Like there's nothing left for you to learn. So apply for those jobs, but figure out how you're going to tell that story. Figure out how you're going to match your cover letter, match your resume, and then match how you show up in an interview to what they're looking for. How are you going to take receipts from work you've done in the past to demonstrate your ability to think critically, think experimentally, use analytics to make decisions, match those things from your experience to what they're looking for, and have a story for the gaps. So like there is a person who was in Growclass and someone was looking for, marketing manager. And one of the things they had on the job description was SEO. They didn't have any experience in SEO. But what they did have was they were taking Growclass and they were playing with the tools. They were using case studies to figure out what kinds of strategies they would build for other companies. They were connecting to mentors in the industry. They were using, tools and strategies in class. So they had some portfolio pieces. So if there's a part of the job description that you don't match with, just try to shore up that skill a little bit and just demonstrate your learning and that you're eager and excited to actually dig into this thing and make it work for the company. Don't just like show up to an interview and hope they don't ask you about it. Because they will, and then that's going to be a bad day for you. And the other thing too is don't this is a very practical tip, but don't just submit your resume online. So that's AI that's looking at your resume a lot of the time. If it's not keyword optimized to what it's looking for, your resume is never going to be shown to a hiring manager. So if you are submitting resumes online, keyword optimize them based on the job description, because AI has taken the first peek at it. And you're not going to immediately get to a human that can understand that context, but try to find a human. Always try to find a human. I receive hundreds and hundreds of resumes. It's really hard to give them all the time and attention that they deserve. The best way in is through a warm introduction.
That's fantastic. And there were so many things in that you had shared too, Sarah, that I'm going to pull out here in a second, but I want to flip it to the audience right now. Actually, I'm really curious and simply use the chat to put it in there, but I'm really curious to know, where are you at in your stage of your career, in your journey? Where are you at? Are you, in the beginning stages of your career? Are you looking to transition into a new career pathway? Are you an entrepreneur who's looking to start up a business, or you're already in the midst of building your business? I'm really curious. So I'm going to flip it to you guys, and I'm going to give everybody just a moment to pop it down into the chat there. And Sarah, you mentioned about making sure that you're telling a story, right? And that got me thinking about, just even personal branding yourself. And again, this all kind of encompasses within marketing, but, telling a story, being able to promote your personal brand in a way that allows you to stand out. And so when you're putting out your resumes, when you're connecting with folks, when you are in that arena, you're always having to sort of tell a story, right? And something that you had shared on your LinkedIn, you did a post about personal branding, actually. You talked a little bit about that imposter syndrome and how some people kind of shy away from actually putting themselves out there. But I liked how you flipped it and you said, it's a great way to connect with people. It's not necessarily about, the spotlight being on you and you having to be special and having to have something amazing to bring to the world in order to show up, but really a way to connect with people, to inspire people, maybe even to entertain people, but even to educate people. And I feel like that helps you stand out as an individual. I see here Stephen saying, I'm in a career transition in the tech industry. That's fantastic. Stephen, he can really leverage what you're saying about personal branding, right? In that post that you did and you made. And that storytelling. I'm just going to jump over here. Sophia is saying early in my career, but looking to potentially and hopefully pursue entrepreneurship. So this is all fantastic. Like what we're talking about is very relevant. And I know there's more of you on there, so don't be shy. Pop in the chat.
Hey, we're not scary.
Sarah, could you give these guys some tips around when it comes to branding and storytelling? And I don't want to scare you guys when I say like storytelling and branding, but really like how to market yourself as an individual in the tech sector. That's what I'm trying to get to. How can they market themselves and help themselves stand out in the tech industry?
Yeah, I would say your personal brand is just your reputation scaled out to a bigger audience, right? Your current reputation that you have with your colleagues and the people around you, and your unique expertise and abilities scaled to a bigger audience. It's not about, there's a lot of like think bro stuff where people are posting screenshots of their Shopify dashboard being like, I made $1 million last month. Like that's not what we're going for here, or at least that's not what I would recommend going for. I think the biggest piece is figuring out who your audience is for your personal brand. Who do you want to influence? If you want to become someone who is known for a particular expertise, who are you writing? Who are, like, because when I think about personal brand, I think about like writing and building content on the internet. That's how a lot of us are building these audiences. So then you have to figure out, who are you building content for? What specifically is your niche? Like, what do you want to present your expertise as focused on? Who are you adding value to? Like you talked about entertaining and educating people. Like when we talk about personal brand, people aren't on the internet to go look at how other people are doing in their careers. Like they're on the internet to like to learn something, or to be entertained, or to be inspired, or like to kill time. So you have to help them do one of those things with your content. Your content can't be focused on you. It's focused on people that you want to serve, people that you want to help. And if you're like quietly not hanging out in the chat thinking like that, but I don't have anything to offer. There is a video on YouTube that has like 268,000 views and likes about how to open a zip file. Like there are folks with millions of followers on TikTok teaching people how to fold t-shirts. Like you have something that you are uniquely qualified to help and teach. And that is what I want you to think about building content around and building a brand around. I would say like your personal brand is a combination of your reputation and your network and your ability to serve a larger audience in a community. And so like, first, we're going to show up for our current network. We're going to build really great relationships. We're going to be seen as someone who's credible, who knows what they're talking about, and who cares about other people. I call this like small town rules, like just live your career like you're in the smallest town in the world, and that everyone is going to talk about everything that happens, because that's true. And then taking from that experience and credibility and building out content on the internet that's going to help you be seen as an expert in an area or in a niche. And if you're not ready to start building that content, then I want you engaging with other people's content. I want you building out a presence and commenting and engaging and starting to build some of those internet relationships and showing up to events and building in-person relationships with people that aren't focused on your needs, but are focused on how you can help and how you can add value. Because that's how you build an audience in a community. It's not about you. It's about the people around you.
Yeah, that's so powerful too, Sarah. I think that sometimes people can just get really hung up in their own heads, and that fear comes up, and then they just don't take any action. They don't do anything. But then it's like on the other side of it is that there's so much, like you said, everybody has something to offer and something that can be of value and that can be of service to others. And so I think that's really, really powerful there in what you're sharing. And I also see it as being something where it does allow you to stand out and allows you to become known for whatever it is that you're out there and you're sharing and you're talking about. And so would you agree that whether you are transitioning into a new career pathway, or if you are growing in your current career, or you're looking to just up level and in entrepreneurship, that all of these things will have a huge ROI.
Yeah. Yeah. The honestly, the best time I have ever spent on my career has just been in investing in other people and investing in my network and building relationships. That is where all of my opportunities have come from. So like the last full-time job that I had came from a Twitter DM from someone who knew me because I emceed an event. And that's how I got that job. Like that company hadn't even publicly announced that they were expanding internationally when I got that note. So I wouldn't have gotten that job if I hadn't been doing that networking work. My consultancy, my first like 15 clients were all people that were part of my personal network. When I started Growclass, the first 50 students in the door were people who I had mentored or I knew or I had worked with, like who were part of my extended network. So if you want to start a business, like a lot of the time, your first customers or clients are going to be people who know you. And the more people that you know and add value to, the bigger that net of support becomes for your career or for your potential business. Or even if you just get bored or you have a bad day and you need options, like what a network does is just open up opportunities for you.
Fantastic. Yeah. Love that. And yeah, thank you for shedding the light on that too. I'm going to once again flip it over to the audience. I know that our time is coming to an end here soon, so I want to give the audience an opportunity to ask any questions that they may have for you at this time. So guys, if you have any questions whatsoever for Sarah, now is your chance to drop them in the chat, and we can start to answer those questions here for you.
Also, I hope I'm saying your name correctly, but congratulations on your first big girl job. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I hope you're loving it.
That's fantastic.
And I love that you want to be an entrepreneur, because I am biased, but I think it's the best career path.
It can be a very rewarding career.
Super hard. Don't do it. It's not for the faint of heart, but it's the most learning I've ever done in my career.
Sarah, as we're waiting for folks to drop their questions in the chat there, I wanted to jump over to a quick thing here. You are the author of a blog and newsletter called We Need to Talk About This. I'm really curious to know, like, what are some of the key takeaways? Can you share some of like the key takeaways that you've gotten from being part of that?
Yeah, I just needed a creative outlet, and it's what I found that I didn't realize. So We Need to Talk About This is just my own personal newsletter. It's a little bit like vulnerability life stuff, but also like activisty, political, feminism stuff. And a lot of the people who have connected to Growclass read We Need to Talk About This. Like they're my personal brand and my business are more closely tied together than I thought. So I built this newsletter, I built this community of folks specifically in the pandemic who were dealing with, potentially politicians they weren't super jazzed about having a lot of power, maybe in the US back in the day. I don't know, no specifics, but people who were, feeling a lot of feelings and needed an outlet for them. And a lot of those people who just align with my values and vibe with who I am as a person outside of my professional life chose to work with me professionally as well. So your personal brand doesn't have to be like this scrubbed stock photo business version of you. You can bring all of the elements of who you are to the table. And yeah, that's maybe going to alienate some people, but the people who find you are going to become fans, not just people who are folks who like read what you write or, like a LinkedIn post every once in a while. Like if they're like, this person cares about the things I care about, their work makes me feel less alone, then that's, my friend Jay always says, like, don't be the best, be their favorite. And so I'm always trying to live by that. There's some really great questions in the chat too, which I'm excited.
Yeah, I see them coming through here as you're answering that last question, Sarah. So do you mind? Let's jump over there and we'll start to
Yeah.
go through some of these questions. So Heather asks, when helping people transition into a career, how can they narrow down their niche? If their skills and
Mhm.
interests are many, how do they decide?
I love it. I'm going to give you a super practical answer and then a slightly more heartfelt answer. The super practical answer is right now, AI is making a lot of marketing functions obsolete. What I would advise anyone to do right now is think about what can't be automated. Like what can only like a lot of it has to do with, very human storytelling and connection, high level strategy. Like what are the things that can't be automated? Like you can't have, and we never really thought until 6 months ago that creative writing would be automated, but try to stay curious, and look towards what the market is going to need, not necessarily what the jobs are right now, and build out your skill set accordingly. Take what, and this is what I always try to do with my business. Like, what does the market need? And what do I love to do? Like, what are the parts of my job that light me up, that don't feel like work, not just what you're good at, because we can be good at things we don't enjoy. So where does that Venn diagram intersect? Of like, what are the, and I want you to get paid well. That's something that I care about with people. I want you to have resources are options. So what is a well-resourced job? Like, what is a high-paying job? What is the market demand? What do I see as something that's not necessarily going to be automated in the near future? And what do I love doing? And where do those two things intersect? And then that is your niche, and start exploring that. If you don't know this automation piece, if that feels fuzzy to you, get really curious, talk to people you admire, talk to your mentors. We made an AI guide at Growclass. You can have that for free. Like, just start doing some of that research, and then also do that personal digging of what you love to do. And those are the logical, and then the more human pieces.
Ooh, that was a fire answer, by the way, Sarah. And that was a really
Oh,
good
thanks.
question too. that was so good. Nader has a question here. It says, hello, Sarah. This is a very interesting chat. My question is, how do you leverage machine learning or AI to improve growth marketing efforts? And what are the tools that you suggest to use for companies that are looking for leads online?
That is a very good question. I have a literal guide that I just wrote. I wrote an actual AI guide last week. So that is, I will drop the link to that in here. So that is basically a full everything that I'm thinking about AI right now in a guide, because I can't answer it even in the full 11 minutes that we have. What I would say is AI is your assistant. It's not replacing you. If you use AI right now to write your social posts or to write blog posts for you, you are writing the lowest common denominator in terms of quality of content. The internet is about to get real noisy with content generated by language models. And that content is not at the level yet that I'm super excited to read any of it. It can be your researcher. It can be your summarizer. It can help you get unblocked. It can take content that you've written and put it into a bunch of tweets that then you go and edit to make them good, and then put them out there. So you should be curious about it. You should be learning it. You should be leveraging it, because a lot of folks are going to stop hiring in certain roles and start leveraging things like ChatGPT. Not that I believe that they should, but that's already happening now. If you want, I've got like a list of things that I use AI for and the prompts that I use in that guide. Go nuts. And I also kind of break down like what a language model actually is and what they can and can't do, and how they work. So hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, Sarah. And there were some little nuggets in there too, guys, on how you can use the Chat GPT and those AIs to basically leverage current content that you already have or things they've already written. So that's also really good. Judith asks, what are the top three most sought after soft skills that are in the tech industry that employers, business owners really look for in candidates. We have lots of research, but what is the pulse on the market? I'm interested in.
Everyone's going to be different. But what I look for empathy. So someone who is going to be really great at doing customer interviews, someone who's going to be really great at community building, and someone who can empathize with their customers in a way that they'll be able to write really great copy and emails that reflect that. I don't think writing is a soft skill, but I think marketers need to be great writers. It's a huge part of our job. And if we are not writing things that connect and convert our customers, then everything else that we're doing isn't really going to work very well. I look for people who are insatiably curious and adaptable. People who are coming out of business schools, sometimes depending on the school and depending on them as a person, sometimes people think they're done learning. They're like, I've done this degree and I should be at a director level. I'm done. And I don't know any director, head of C-suite folks that I respect that feel like they're done. None of us feel like we're done. So I'm looking for indications of that curiosity. Do they have things that they love researching on the side, things that they read, things that they really care about, that they get super excited and invested in? And yeah, it's honestly, especially in early stage technology, you need resilience. Like you need someone who can pick themselves up and dust themselves off really quickly after a failure and say, okay, I just ran head first into a wall, but I'm still interested in finding that window. Like I'm not going to take a lot of downtime before I get up and try again. So that would be what I'm looking for, and what a lot of folks in my network will be looking for. Yeah.
Great question and fantastic answer on that too, Sarah. Sophia says, hi, Sarah, thanks so much for all your advice. In your experience, what's the best platform to cold message professionals? Thank you.
There's no good place to cold message people. Cold messages are cold, like they're very chilly for a reason, right? Like cold messages on LinkedIn, I don't love. Cold messages on via email or DM on Twitter, I don't love. What matters is the content of that message and the context of the platform. So LinkedIn, when I get like weird personal requests on LinkedIn, that's very strange. That's not the context for that. So I would just match the context to what you're going for, and then get really good at crafting cold messages, because most of them are terrible. And please, if it's helpful, I do tear downs of cold emails on LinkedIn all the time. So I've got videos there if that's helpful. And then I also did one for palette skills. So content and context, good content, context that makes sense for them to receive that message. Not Facebook. Nobody's on Facebook. And if you message me on Facebook, I'll never see it.
And just a reminder too, Sarah has a ton of content that she posts on her LinkedIn. So definitely go over there to follow her for some more in-depth stuff that she basically talks about on what we've discussed today. And then on the Palette Skills website as well, we've got some webinars and workshops on there by folks like Sarah, who are showing you how to, break down a really good cold email outreach. So there's that too. There's tons of resources out there, guys. I am going to jump over to Mehek's question. She's asking, what are the most effective ways to build trust and credibility with potential customers?
What's the best way to build trust and credibility with potential customers? Existing credibility is helpful. So if you can show them case studies and receipts of things that you've been able to do in the past for other customers, to be honest, and it bothers me every time, but it works. Press logos and logos of companies that you've worked with before are helpful. People don't want to be the first. Like people don't want to be the very first one to work with you. They want to see evidence that you've had, that you've been able to do this for other people in the past. And then the other thing is just listen to them. A lot of people on sales calls talk a lot. I don't talk on sales calls. I ask a lot of questions because you can't help someone if you don't know them. So getting really curious about their problems, what makes them tick, what are they struggling with, and how you can be of service. And doing what you'll say you'll do. If you're a freelancer and you say you're going to send a proposal over on Friday, send the proposal over on Friday. Like, just be consistent and show up as a professional in every context.
That's great. And we'll take this last question here that Kedar has dropped in the chat. He says, you've done a great job creating a community of professionals who support each other through Growclass. Can you share some tips on what makes an effective community? That's a good one.
I love that question so much. So I've been building communities almost my entire career. My last company, Tilt, we built I think it's still the largest student ambassador program of all time. It was 6,000 students spread across 7 countries. And the biggest thing is like there's a couple of things. One, you need to identify what people have in common, why they would come together, why they would collect around a subject, or like for us, for Growclass, there's tons of training programs that you can go to teach you marketing. We have a very specific niche. We teach a very, very specific thing. We do it in a very specific way. But the biggest benefit is the network that you can gain from coming to Growclass versus another one. Because we curate a Slack community, we spend all of our time in there answering questions, connecting people directly to each other. The last thing that you want to do if you're building a community on something like Slack or Discord or Facebook is drop someone in cold into an experience. It would be like hosting a party and someone walks into the room and no one turns around to talk to them, right? Like, you want to make sure that you are onboarding folks to that community. You are connecting them with individuals in that community so they feel like they know what's going on, that you're giving them all of the context. Like in Growclass, we use the crab emoji all the time. It's our way of saying, like, thank you for sharing your brilliance. It's an inside joke. And so we have to let you in on all of our inside jokes as soon as you get there so that you never feel left out. So just think about building community online like you're hosting a really good party. What do people need to know before they get there? You don't want someone showing up in a toga to a cocktail party. Like, what do they need to know on that invitation to the community to help them feel comfortable joining? And then how do you give them a big warm hug and their favorite drink as soon as they arrive, and lay out that experience for them? And it's not about the number of people. It's about how excited and enthusiastic those people are about the experience.
That's fantastic.
Sorry, I could talk about community all day.
Maybe we'll have to have a whole fireside chat on even just building community. I feel like you've got lots of great gems on that. Well, listen, guys, we are just about coming to a close for today's fireside chat. Quick couple of things that I just want to basically summarize and before we finish is, so we've touched on a lot today. I know we jumped into talking about growth marketing. We also talked a little bit about personal branding, and then answered your guys' amazing questions that you dropped in the chat. But just to kind of summarize some of the key things that I felt like really stood out, was a few things. So one thing being really making sure that you're always having a growth mindset continuously, no matter where you're at in your journey, making sure that you're constantly growing and surround yourself by supportive people as well as mentors. The second thing that came up through our conversation that really stood out is the power of networking. Really making sure that you are building your network, you're putting yourself out there and you're pouring into people, and how this is going to have such a huge ROI on you and where you're going, right? Pouring into your people first is number one. And then when it comes to just anything, we talked a little bit about, not getting distracted by shiny object syndrome, and just getting focused on what is that thing that you really want to try and experimenting. I really love that you touched on that, because I really do feel like that is something that's so powerful in so many areas, is really just going out and experimenting to seeing what works, because there's no one size fits all with anything. The other part that we talked about was leveraging your personal branding, the ability to tell your story, whether that is through your resume, putting out content online, and really just building out your personal brand as an effective way of marketing as an individual as well. And then finally, I really love this that you're talking about too, is building that trust and credibility. So going back to that answer that you gave to McHeck, I think that's so important, especially no matter where you're at, like as a professional and entrepreneur, business owner, building that trust and credibility with folks who you want to collaborate with, partner with, or your customers is really important to be doing that. And so I think that, Sarah, you hit the nail on the head, is just, that showing up with that consistency, with integrity, and just continuously building that trust with your people is so, again, the huge ROI on your pathway. Listen, guys, I just want to quickly just share, thanks again, Sarah, for joining. Here at Palette Skills, we're committed to helping people and companies achieve their full potential, and that's through our upskilling programs. And I really hope this conversation was able to help you explore new ways to navigate, the ever-changing landscape in marketing, and to really just kind of help you find success in where you're at in your career. Don't forget to follow Palette Skills as well as Growclass on social media. We'll drop the links below, and so that you can learn more about the amazing work that our organizations are out here doing. And and then lastly, I just want to also leave you guys with, for any of you guys who are actually looking to transition into the tech sector, we've got an incredible opportunity here where we run an upskilling program called Sales Camp. It's a B2B tech sales program, and we're upskilling Canadians in this program to help them meet with employers who are actually looking to hire talent now. And so you'll go through learning all those hard skills and transition you into the tech industry within sales, connecting you with employers. We actually have an upcoming cohort, which is happening on May 23rd. There's still time to apply. So if my team could drop that link down in the chat, you can go and check out the Sales Camp program and check out the eligibility. Maybe it's for you. Hey, if you've been on the fence about getting into tech sales, maybe this is your sign. So check that out. With that, guys, Sarah, thank you so very much for being with us today. You were amazing. You just shared so much, so many gems and so much knowledge, and just really wanted to say thank you for being here. And
thank you so much for having me. This was lovely.
Yeah, I hope we can do it again in the future. And for everybody who joined in today, thanks again for joining us. And I hope everybody has a fantastic weekend. Bye for now.